right now 7 o'clock, so I'll go ahead and get us started. So thank you everyone for coming. I am recording tonight's session, so we are going to ask if you are not one of our presenters to go ahead and have your cameras off, which all of you do, and on mute for the recording. With that in mind, I will be sharing the recording tomorrow on our YouTube, and I'll email everyone who registered as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and do our land acknowledgement. Texas Children in Nature Network is headquartered in Austin, and as such, I'm on the ancestral and unceded land of the Tonkawa, Comanche, and Sauna people. Our ongoing colonial presence on Indigenous lands compels us to take action now to counteract the effects of colonization. The work we do through the Texas Children in Nature Network is one small step towards that effort. And I am going to put a couple of links in the chat about our land acknowledgement. And then I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to our presenters. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for inviting us. My name is Katie Erickson. I'm Director of Programs at the San Antonio Botanical Garden. And I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ann Messbarger-Iguia. I am Vice President of Strategy and Operations for CHEF, which stands for Culinary Health Education for Families here in San Antonio.
Great. Would you like to go ahead and start, Ann?
Sure. And this is kind of a tag team. We'll go back and forth. And Katie, if you could move on to the next slide. You're controlling, right?
Sarah is tonight.
Sarah. Okay. Well, thank you, Sarah. So just a brief overview of what Katie and I put together for you all today. We're going to talk briefly about our organizations and the partnership between CHEF and the San Antonio Botanical Gardens. We're going to talk about culinary nutrition, specifically in the garden, as well as beyond with the CHEF program. Katie's going to speak very specifically to how the garden continued programming during the pandemic. And we're going to end with sort of our next big push with our partnership, which is our So Healthy program, which is a garden to table program. And we'll end with some questions. Thank you. So just briefly to tell you a little bit about CHEF. We were funded by a local family foundation, the Goldsb Foundation here in San Antonio. Kit and Angela Goldsb made their fortune on paste picante sauce. So they're very familiar with tomatoes and gardens and all the herbs and spices that go into tomato or to picante sauce. And if some of you are old enough to remember the Get a Rope campaign about paste picante being made or salsa being made in New York City, that was Kit Goldsberry's campaign that elevated paste to #1 in the country. He sold, and the rest is history. And he became a very generous philanthropist. So he and his wife challenged his team, which was us at the time. We were embedded in the Goldsb Foundation to come up with a program that would marry nutrition and nutrition education with culinary skills, two strong passions of theirs, and celebrate San Antonio's unique culture and San Antonio cuisine, culturally familiar, culturally appropriate recipes, ingredients, etc., really in service to children and families. So that was sort of our challenge. We spent a great deal of time researching, doing some very fun, interesting research, sort of combining these concepts, and we landed on the concept of culinary medicine, which at the time was relatively new. It's certainly caught on and has got more traction since then, but it was a relatively new concept. Could you go to the next slide, please? So really, CHEF is rooted in the belief that food is medicine, and we are truly the groundbreaking provider of culinary health education in San Antonio. Next slide. I'll just speak briefly, our original partner and only partner at the very beginning was the Children's Hospital of San Antonio. And our plan was to embed this program in a clinical setting and address the needs of all of San Antonio, but really grounding it in a clinical setting where we built a teaching kitchen at the Children's Hospital of San Antonio and set out to address the needs of sick children who had dietary implications for their care plan, as well as the rest of the city. And we'll talk briefly later on about how that partnership was the first of many really important partnerships and that we have moved well beyond them. But the mission has stayed the same. We teach children and families basic nutrition and practical cooking skills. with the long-term goal of motivating individuals and communities to adopt and sustain healthier eating habits. And I just want to sit for a minute on the concept of basic nutrition, practical cooking skills. We are not creating chefs, nor are we creating registered dietitians. We are really trying to take the most practical, usable, actionable information in both of these areas, nutrition and cooking, to empower people at the earliest stage possible to be able to identify and select healthy foods and prepare them in a way that they like and they will eat and they will sustain in terms of behavior over a lifetime. Next slide, please. So chef, these are sort of the components, the building blocks of our program. First and foremost, in our research that I mentioned, we certainly identified a compelling need for nutrition and culinary education in our community. San Antonio is facing, like many communities across this country, a literal pandemic, epidemic, not pandemic, of diet-related chronic disease. We are seeing rising rates of heart disease, of diabetes, of obesity. And the scary thing is, we are alarmed by those increases in our adult population, but they are creeping into our pediatric population at very alarming rates. So the need is there. And the need, the other thing we like to talk about is the fact that demographically, San Antonio is considered to be a bellwether for the rest of the nation, that our demographics and therefore a lot of our population health challenges are reflective of what the rest of the country will be looking at in the next 20 years. So if we can get things right in San Antonio, we have a great opportunity to teach the rest of the country how to do this. So as I mentioned, we took a homegrown approach to developing this program, specifically around the curricula. We have developed 5 lines of curricula so far, one in partnership with the San Antonio Botanical Gardens. And all of our curricula revolves around a recipe, an activity, which may be gardening, but a recipe and a nutrition lesson. And everything that we use, everything that we do is culturally familiar, culturally appropriate to the San Antonio community. I spoke about our first partner, which was the Children's Hospital of San Antonio. We learned very quickly that as a team of, at the time, 3, we're now a team of 5, we can't do anything alone. And we have a wonderful bank of passionate partners that are committed to this. And I'll show you the names of some of them in just a few slides, but the San Antonio Botanical Gardens was one of our first, and it is one of our most valued partners. And what we do is we work with our partners to train and certify their staff to teach the chef program, and then they allow the program to grow. So we develop programming, we develop tools and resources to support the programming out in the community, and then we ask our partners to run with the program. Our program is very scalable for that reason. And we've housed everything on a really carefully developed, what we call our partner portal. It's a website, password protected website, where once we've got an MOU in place, we can train and certify instructors, we can provide curricula, we can provide family activity, tools and resources. It's just a huge resource for our partners out in the community. And we like to say we could train and support chef programming in San Antonio or in Toronto, Canada, just as easily because of the tools that we have in place. And finally, we have validated impact. We've been evaluated by 2 external teams, third-party teams, that have both found chef to be statistically significantly effective in addressing improved nutrition knowledge, self-efficacy, and eating behavior and cooking and behaviors regarding cooking at home. So we feel like we've got a great story to tell, and that story is strong because of our partners more than anything else. Next slide, please. So this is a list of our partners, and you can see San Antonio Botanical Gardens is right there, but we've got all sorts of wonder. The San Antonio Food Bank, each one of these playing a really critical role in either the development of the program or the growth of the program. Next slide. So I mentioned we started at the Children's Hospital. Once we got we built a beautiful teaching kitchen in the Children's Hospital, but found that the hospital had its hands full, just addressing the needs of sick children and trying to educate physicians who get very little education around the whole area of nutrition and nothing in terms of culinary. So we quickly realized while the work there is very important, we weren't going to reach the numbers of kids that we wanted to reach. So we began to partner with members of the community, that's a beautiful photo of the San Antonio Botanical Gardens, the culinary garden where a chef teaching kitchen resides. So we expanded in the community with botanical gardens, YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, etc. And that gave kids much more, that kind of focused on the well child as opposed to the sick child. With the success of those programs, we then moved into schools. And right now, by January, we will be in 100 San Antonio schools, reaching over 20,000 students. And that's probably a low number since we have many more. Right now, we have more demand than we can keep up with in the schools. So that's, if you go to the next slide, I can just show you very briefly our trajectory of the number of people that we've served. If you start in 2017, it was about 700. And in 2020, like I said, it was about 16,000, but at the end, by 2021, we'll be well over 24,000. And I mentioned our impact, the two separate evaluations, again, showing impact in knowledge, positive and significant impact in knowledge, self-efficacy, and eating and cooking behaviors. Next slide. So Katie and I like this slide because it's sort of how it started. This is Chef in the San Antonio Botanical Gardens, the very initial renderings of what we hoped this culinary garden and chef teaching kitchen and pavilion would look like. So Katie, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Sarah, can you go to the next slide, please? So the San Antonio Botanical Garden is about 41 years old, and we have 38 acres of garden space. The newest spaces that we've developed are more active, engaging areas. I'll get to those in a second. But here you can see in this picture from above our 5 conservatory buildings. That's part of our conservatory complex, and we house plants from all over the world that grow in different ecosystems. And we have a series of Texas native trails that show off 3 of our ecoregions right here in Texas. And we have display beds and our rose garden and a Japanese garden, and it's just a really fabulous place to be. And it was approximately 32 or so acres leading up until about 4 years ago, when the opening of the remainder of our 38 acres opened yes, 4 years ago. So next slide, please. So as the botanical garden was thinking about growing and expanding their grounds and their gardens, they're really thinking about mission and about how we can make better connections with people and plants. And so 2 of those ways are through these new gardens that we opened 4 years ago. So next slide, please. So this is a snapshot from our Family Adventure Garden, which is a 2.5 acre space that is, based on Texas native plants, Texas topography, and it has 15 different fun spaces where you can do things like roll down a hill or splash in a creek or stack rocks and sticks and just have some fun. And learn how to play in nature and be exposed to nature, because we all know those benefits for families and youth of being exposed to nature at an early age, both for health and also for stewardship of the environment later, and many other things. Next slide, please. And so the culinary space that we're focusing on in our talk today was really inspired by our children's vegetable garden, which is on the east side of our property, just north of the new Family Adventure Garden. It's about a 1 acre space, and there are roughly 70 or so beds. These are actually my boys here working on some planting some plants for the fall session of our children's vegetable garden program, where we have like a 16-week program where families and kids come together and they're in charge of an entire bed. And they start by tilling the soil, pulling the weeds, preparing the land, and planting, weeding, watering, maintaining all throughout those 16 weeks, all the way to harvesting and learning how to harvest and also how to use the produce. So this program has been with the gardens nearly since the beginning of the botanical gardens beginning, again, over 41 years ago that it began. So it's definitely about a 38 or so year old program. And it has touched so many lives, and it's been such a wonderful opportunity for families to come back week after week and see plants grow into fruits and vegetables. Next slide, please. But we knew that not everybody in the city could participate in that 16-week-long program, even though we'd love to. We just don't have the space and the time to, of course, do that for our entire city. So we built the Zachary Foundation Culinary Garden and the Outdoor Chef Teaching Kitchen and Goldsb Foundation Pavilion. So here you can see a group of students harvesting plants for their recipes, and right behind them you can see the outdoor teaching kitchen covered by the pavilion there. And I'm going to hand it back to Anne for a second, and she's going to talk about kind of that collaborative effort to build this space with funding from the Goldsb Foundation.
So yes, I mentioned that Chef, the original team, which included myself and Susie Feldman, who's the executive director, we were part of the Goldsb Foundation. And when we started envisioning these teaching kitchens in the community, we engaged the Culinary Institute of America, which is also a large nonprofit funded by Kate Goldsb, the Goldsb Foundation. We engaged them to help us think through the teaching kitchens that we built around the city. And we had a lot of fun envisioning and working with the botanical gardens designers, envisioning this outdoor teaching kitchen in the middle of this beautiful culinary garden. Could you go to the next slide, please? So there was a 20, and one thing to make clear is the Goldsb Foundation gave a grant to the botanical gardens to cover the cost of the construction and the design and construction of the kitchen, as well as a certain amount of operations in the very beginning. And after that point, our partnership really consists of, we provide curricula for the botanical gardens to use as appropriate, but they also have total ownership of their staff and the classes and curricula and the programming that they put together beyond Chef in this space. We believe really strongly that each one of our nonprofit partners has to be able to operate their kitchens and their programs in a way that's sustainable. So we don't require a certain amount of Chef programming, but we ask that the culinary nutrition programming is that it be Chef. As I mentioned, we have multiple lines of curricula. Right now, I think it's 5. 2 that we have evaluated and have out active in the community, and several more that we're getting ready to pilot. And then Katie, do you want to talk about your camps and other programming that's specific?
Yeah, so if we can have next slide. One more, thank you. And I also just want to reiterate that it's so fabulous that we have this space that was a gift from the very beginning, and that we have access to the curriculum, and we also have access to training. So as we onboard new staff members and new volunteers, just like yesterday, I walked past the outdoor teaching kitchen and we had a group of about 14 individuals being trained on the Chef program by a food bank nutritionist who's been trained to train others. And so it's just such a wonderful way to sustain this program. So this group right here is a group of campers who spent an entire week in this kitchen and in our classroom spaces and out in the culinary garden. At the time, my office looked out over this space and they really owned the space. It was fun watching them. And it was also so much fun watching them start off the week, you know, just kind of interested in cooking. And then by the end, they were very confident in their skills and ready to present their recipes to their family who came in for a tasting at about noontime, and to see what surprise their families had that their children had made these delicious recipes. So we offer summer camps. We also offer spring break camps, and we're going to offer a Thanksgiving camp here in the first 3 days of Thanksgiving week to help kiddos learn to make some healthy sides they can contribute to their own meals within their family units. Next slide, please. And here is actually the same group here, but we are advertising our chef cooking workshops for student groups. So we also offer hands-on cooking opportunities for schools, or if the group is really, really large and maybe can't do the entire hands-on experience, they'll come in and get a tour of the culinary garden, and they'll watch a demonstration and they'll do a tasting. And so no matter what, we want for kids to see the vegetables and plants growing in the garden, to taste, to touch, to smell, and to learn some exciting recipes. Next slide, please. And here is a group of, just one more snapshot. Here's a group of multi-age kids coming through communities and schools to participate in this program. And we got some really great feedbacks. I love that quote. I've always wanted to be a chef, from a student who was chopping onions, and they just were proclaiming it to the entire group. And we also get some really wonderful feedback from our coordinators and teachers who bring their students here. So next we have a video. Sarah, if I can have you go to that.
Give me just a second. I got to pull it up on YouTube and then I will start it up.
Okay.
I love that. I've always wanted to be a chef quote.
Yes.
And it's probably a 6 or 7-year-old. I've always wanted.
Yeah, always.
My whole life.
Yes.
We had somebody in Chef Dave's class at the Botanical Garden.
CHEF stands for Culinary Health Education for Families. We're a culinary health education program that teaches kids and their families how to cook healthy meals through basic nutrition and practical cooking skills. We partner with the Mayor's Fitness Council Student Ambassador Program, which is a leadership program here in San Antonio where 5th graders to high schoolers get to bring a health initiative to their campus or community. For the 5th graders in the elementary schools, they bring the CHEF program to their school. We chose the San Antonio Botanical Garden Teaching Kitchen today for our end of year celebration because it's surrounded by this beautiful culinary garden so that the kids get to see that connection of their food growing to then go back into the kitchen to cook their meal.
We built a camaraderie and a kind of a community around food at our school through the chef program. The biggest thing that I've noticed is students at lunch just acknowledge, hey coach, look, I put this on my plate. I know this is good for me.
Since I've been in the chef program, I've learned many new ways on making new foods and helping myself being healthy.
I've learned that eating healthy can prevent diseases when you grow older and that it keeps you in shape.
We could not do these chef classes alone. We partner with incredible nutrition educators that come out and help us teach our classes.
We have to go back to the basics and learning that it's easy to cook, that it's not that difficult. And it's amazing how the parents have come and tell me, well, he made me go to the store and buy all the ingredients so he can try and cook it at home. So that proves that it's working.
My daughter has been in the program from the beginning and she's really, really enjoyed it. I saw some, really great improvements in her eating habits and her, willing to participate in becoming more healthy.
What I hope to do with the chef program is to encourage other kids to do the chef program and become healthier.
What I liked about the chef program was how you get to cook healthy and that I've got to meet a lot of other kids that like to cook like me.
Our ultimate goal with the chef program is to reach these kids while they're really young, to start promoting healthy habits in their lives and making sure that all the healthy habits that we teach are sustainable, that they can use throughout their lives.
Great. I love that video. When you are able to get it back up, Sarah, if you could take it to the next slide, please. As Anne mentioned, in addition to the Culinary Health Education for Families curriculum, we do also offer programs for other ages and other topics as well. And so we really do keep the chef program primarily within the youth and family audience, though we have used it for some university students or some adults who are just really wanting to get down to the basics. So it's a really great curriculum just to go back to. But here we also have pictured Chef Katrina Flores, who's our current resident chef, and she leads all sorts of programs for adults to learn some really specific techniques or just have fun on date nights or do cocktail scavenger hunts. But it's all surrounding harvesting plants that are grown right there in the culinary garden. Next slide, please. And also just to briefly touch on how we did our programming throughout the pandemic. The botanical garden was shut down for 7 weeks and then we reopened, and we really focused on offering families and youth opportunities to engage with each other in a safe way, a safe distance from each other, through Little Sprouts hikes, through story time in the garden. And we also did some festivals that focused on different plants such as chilies or citrus, where we focused on pollinators and honey, with bees and honey. And so we still were able to make those connections kind of on a larger safe festival scale, connecting people with plants and food. And then of course, we also offered virtual classes. So we, for all ages, for young kids, through summer camps, through family groups, and also just for adults, we offered our cooking classes in ways where people could come pick up grocery ingredient packs, or they could get a grocery shopping list if they didn't want to purchase the ingredient pack, and then they'd sign into Zoom and they go through a cooking lesson within their own kitchen from our instructors from the garden. So we were really trying to keep all of our experiences very engaging as possible as you can during a pandemic. I think, next slide, please.
So I'll take this one. What's next for culinary nutrition in the garden? I mentioned that we have several lines of curricula, a couple that are out there in circulation and a couple that are being piloted right now. And our next big focus is So Healthy, which is a garden to table curriculum. Actually, we developed it in partnership with the San Antonio Food Bank and the San Antonio Botanical Gardens right before the pandemic hit, and with big plans to roll it out in a pretty robust way. But as we all know, the pandemic had other plans for us. So right now we have it rolled out and I would say fairly vetted in 10 pilot schools on the north side of San Antonio. And we're gonna offer it in 2 middle schools in January. And the Botanical Gardens is going to start offering it. As Katie said, they've got a very intensive gardening program, 16-week gardening program. This So Healthy program is a 7-lesson. In schools, it's taught over 7 weeks, but there's some flexibility to how each one of these lessons is taught. But it's an experience that, when we work with our partners, we always say we try to meet them where they are. It's an experience that can be modified to the circumstances or the environment in which the students are and in which our partner operates. Could you go to the next slide, please, Sarah? Actually, go to the next one as well. So Healthy is, as I said, it's garden to table. Again, it teaches sort of the basic hands-on gardening and cooking, and then those cooking skills are embedded in a nutrition lesson as well. And what we talked about this earlier, what we've learned is when kids participate in growing the food that they eat, they're much more willing to try something new. And it's the same for if they participate in producing or in cooking the food. They will definitely be more open to eating them, even vegetables. So as I said, our curriculum consists of 8 lessons over a 7-week period, and each lesson has a gardening and a cooking component. Could you go to the next slide, please? We talk about, we're real at Chef, we think we've done a really good job. We've certainly honed our training and our programming tools that we use to support our partners. So each one of our lessons within this 7-week curriculum includes an indoor gardening activity, and that was at the request of our Title I school partners, who said that not all of their students live in a home. Not all of their students have access to a garden or a backyard. So we want to make sure that each lesson also includes an indoor gardening potted plant activity. It includes an outdoor gardening activity. In the case of a school, that'll be in a school garden. In the case of the botanical gardens, obviously much more expansive. And then finally, a nutrition and cooking lesson. All of our lessons are TEKS aligned for pre-K through 8th grade. Next slide, please. And then again, these are just some of the tools that we provide our instructors. Once they've gone through our training and certification process, we have recipes, recipe cards, scripts for people who are feeling less confident in teaching a class. We have family engagement activities, all sorts of resources on that portal that I referred to earlier, to try and make the teaching of these classes, stress-free as possible, but also to make sure that the lessons we teach are highly consistent and fact-based and based on the evidence that we used to build the curriculum. Next slide, please. Again, more activity, more information and tools and resources that we provide to our teachers, activity ideas, background information for them to hone up on their skills before offering a class, etc. Next slide. So that's all I think we have formally prepared. And at this point, we'd love to entertain any questions, comments, thoughts.
I'll just announce we're a small enough group that if you feel like you would like to just take yourself off mute to ask your question, please feel free. Or if you'd like to put it in the chat, I'm more than happy to voice those questions for you. But I think I'll kind of get the questions started with kind of it's the same question I asked you earlier this afternoon, because I think it's a really good one, which is, what has kind of been your biggest lesson that you've learned through this process?
Katie, do you want to start?
You go ahead, Anne.
All right. Well, I will speak for Chef. And this is really, I would say, based on our experience during the pandemic. What we learned, we really thought our teachers were going to kind of walk away from our programming during the pandemic because they had so many other challenges. They were just barely keeping their heads above water. I don't think there weren't many jobs more difficult than being a teacher during the pandemic. But what happened is we doubled in size. We doubled in the number of schools offering Chef during the pandemic, because I think our teachers really saw the need. They saw, and they made the connection between what their children, what their students were eating and the health of that population and our overall community. And I think more and more people made that connection nationally and certainly locally because of how the pandemic affected people who already had diet-related chronic disease. So that was one thing we didn't anticipate. We really thought, all right, we're all going to be on hiatus for a good year, because we just didn't anticipate teachers asking for the program. And not only did our first 20 schools keep it, but an additional 20 within just one district added the programming, and we tripled the number of children we taught over the pandemic versus the year prior. So that was one big lesson. People value this.
That's great. Yeah, and for us, I really think it's been just a learning experience of how to expand our programs. And because we work with so many different audiences, and sometimes we see people for 2 minutes if it's a drop-in demo, or see people for an entire week if it's a summer camp, or just an hour if it's a school visit. So we really want to try to provide everybody with a great opportunity, and an opportunity to taste and touch and smell and learn a little something new and be inspired and be empowered. And so our biggest learning has come through just how it works best for each of those groups.
Thank you so much. Does anyone else have a question? what are some ways that maybe some of our partners who are on the call today that aren't in San Antonio might be able to engage with your work?
Katie, do you want to address that, or do you want me to speak specifically to Chef?
Sure. I mean, if so I guess there's multiple ways. So if there is a group out there who would like to participate in the program with one of our instructors, then we do offer virtual classes. And if you're with an organization who's helping to incorporate tasting and recipes into your maybe vegetable garden program, then I think both Anne and I and our teams can help just give general advice about that, some ways that we feel like it's worked the best. And then, Anne, would you like to talk about Chef specifically?
Sure. So our program has been entirely underwritten by a local philanthropist, and the curricula, the programming, the materials, et cetera, were all funded specifically for San Antonio and San Antonio partners and schools. So and so there's everything we've done has been done at no cost to these partners so far. Anybody outside of San Antonio, we're working on developing a pricing structure so that very reasonable pricing structure so that we can see this program grow and make it available to other folks. As I said, we have the infrastructure in place to be able to support this outside of San Antonio. The question is at the price point. So we're playing with that right now, and I will put my email in the chat. If anybody is interested, I'd be happy to talk to you about it, talk to you about what we're doing. Right now, I mentioned earlier that we're working with the Children's Hospital of Jackson, Mississippi, and they are going to be implementing our program in 2 Jackson schools.
And I added my email address in there too.
Oh, good. Any other questions? I'd be curious to know what interested you all about this topic.
Mm-hmm.
This is Tony Tuckler. You can hear me?
Yes.
So I work with 3 elementary schools, and we've got a high school program going in my southwest area of Sharpstown. The important thing to me is the kids love to garden, and I try and get those vegetables home, but then incorporating the culinary aspect is the part that I'm weak with. So that's why I'm interested in learning more about how to bring that about.
Well, we would say, working again pretty closely with the food bank, that's a huge challenge. You can generate all the beautiful produce in the world, but if people don't know how to prepare it, it doesn't get eaten, it doesn't get consumed. So our recipes are very simple. The recipes we use in schools involve no heat. We're usually limited number of ingredients, very low cost. And the whole idea is that in schools, all of our classes, all of the cooking demonstrations, et cetera, are taught by our PE teachers. So they're not chefs. So it can be done. It absolutely can be done.
And then do you send those recipes home with the kids for their families to use? Is that what it is?
You know what? We didn't anticipate doing that initially. And our first foray in the community was in places like the Botanical Gardens and after school programs and the Boys and Girls Club. And when parents came to pick up their kids from these activities, they started asking for the recipes, and we realized, okay, there is an interest there. So yeah, so then we started incorporating not just the recipe, but then a family activity that went with the recipe. Because we know that if you sit down as a family and eat together and turn off your technology, you have less obesity. There are all sorts of benefits well beyond just the nutritional factor that take place. So yeah, we send them home either electronically or we send them home in handouts. Katie, I'm assuming you give those handouts to parents when they pick up kids from the camp as well.
Yes. Yes.
We do have a comment from Dawn saying she was hoping to get some recipe ideas for her classroom. And so with turning that into a question, I'm wondering, what are y'all's favorite things to make with the kids when you're helping with the program?
Well, the one thing is, I don't want to be so withholding as to not say that if you go to chefsa.org, We have lots of free materials on that website and lots of recipes. So please help yourself to those. What's your favorite recipe, Katie?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because sometimes whenever I'm cooking for my kids, I actually just pop up your website and it gives me some inspiration.
That's great.
Yes. I would say some of my favorites are the confetti corn salad. It's just such wonderful flavors, and it's bright, beautiful salad. And let's see here. There was another one.
I'm a big fan of the apple nachos. I don't know if you've had those.
No.
That we use that in our sports nutrition class, but also in the second year of Chef Bites in school. But it's a no cook. It's apples and Greek yogurt and peanut butter and sunflower seeds and cranberries, and it's just got a great blend of fiber and healthy fats, and it's delicious, and it's great for, I've got a soccer player, and I'm kind of training him to not grab the Cliff Bar, but to actually eat something like that if I have it ready when he comes back from practice. But yeah, no, we've got tons of great recipes. The apple cheddar quesadilla is a good one. I like cornfetti. Our one that we always start with is the wholesome burrito bowl.
Yes.
Which is all, it's perfect for a garden, because I've watched it prepared at the garden, where one of the things we lead with is cover half your plate with fruits and vegetables. And so you watch the kids go, wait, I don't have enough colors here. Let me go find some more colors. And they literally run out to the garden, pick out more colors, come back in, and they look to see who's got more color. I mean, that's the beauty of the botanical garden.
Yeah.
At the kitchen.
So I think, Anne, you kind of answered this, but Grace asks, can you give some examples of the no heat recipes that you do in the classroom?
So yeah, we've gotten really creative. We have a team of registered dietitians that helped us design these recipes. Actually, we borrowed some from the CIA as well, the Culinary Institute of America. It's nice that we have all these chef friends, if you will, because of our funder. So yeah, I mentioned the apple nachos, the quesadilla does involve heat. The wholesome burrito bowl, you don't have to have rice, but if you use rice, we get the pre-cooked rice that you pop in the microwave. If we're trying to get we're helping teachers in the classroom be able to teach this. We do a super berry bowl, which is yogurt and fruit and whipped with cinnamon and a little bit of honey, and then fruit. And what we try and do is say, okay, what's in season? If apples aren't in season, but grapes are in season, let's incorporate the grapes into this super berry bowl. But if grapes aren't in season and we want, pears or whatever, it's trying to give kids sort of the formula, but not necessarily the exact ingredients that have to go into every recipe. We use, because we're working with Jackson, the Children's Hospital in Jackson, Mississippi, this was an interesting challenge. This is a very, very, very low income community that we're working with that they largely eat, Southern cooking, soul food. So we hired a woman to help us design a whole series of recipes that went with our nutrition lessons, but specifically for this population. And they asked her to do most of her shopping at the dollar store, and dollar store and Walmart, and you can get fresh produce at Walmart, even in some cases at the dollar store. So that's what she did. And she kept each one of her recipes like below $2. And it was, they were delicious. They were absolutely delicious. I was so skeptical going into the food tasting because she came in and prepared them all for us, but it was, it was kind of remarkable. I'm running out of ideas in my head about our no cook recipes. We've got tons of them. So please help yourself to the website, chefsa.org. And
the energy bites are so good.
Oh yeah, those are really good. Oatmeal and peanut butter and little mini chocolate chips. Those are good. And no bake. Any other questions?
Okay. Well, I thought I'd just kind of read a couple more of the answers you got for why people were interested in coming to this workshop. Laura says, I'm a science teacher and a garden coordinator at a school in Dallas and always looking for some relevant PD. This webinar was exactly that.
Oh, good.
Grace wrote she's a food corps service member in Detroit attempting to bring gardening, nutrition, and culinary education into schools.
Oh, food corps. I am so interested in your program. We work with AmeriCorps, but I love the whole concept of food corps. I think it is so desperately needed across the country. I wish y'all would come to San Antonio.
Grace, if you feel comfortable, would you be willing to share a little bit about your program in case anyone who is on the call isn't familiar?
Yeah, so Food Corps is an AmeriCorps program. It's just a branch of it. So, you can apply and you can go through an interview process, and they accept a lot of younger people who maybe just graduated and are looking for sort of a bridge to finding, a foot in the door with food sustainability, security, and so it's a really good program, and I'm learning a lot, definitely. It's great so far.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I mean, in San Antonio, especially in the schools that we're in right now, 92% of the kids that we work with are living with food insecurity. And, San Antonio, unfortunately, I think became famous or virtually famous with that photo of all of the cars that lined up at the San Antonio Food Bank in the middle of the pandemic. It was 10,000 cars when they expected 500. And we sort of became the face of that, the face of food insecurity and hunger. Organizations like Food Corps, I think, are so critical for us addressing that need and coming up with long-term solutions.
Wonderful. Lauren wrote, I'm a garden educator in Dallas, and I'm always looking for new ways to incorporate our produce into lessons and always needing more recipes. So check out that chefsa.org. I did put the link in the chat, and I'll be sure to share it when I send out the recording as well.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And then Lauren wrote that Linda wrote that she cooks with her pre-K class every day.
So Linda, Chef works with Pre-K for SA, which is our citywide publicly funded pre-K program. And they converted our curricula to the high scope format. And we meet all of their golden goals, I think is what they're called. And they teach, it is amazing to see what they do. And I would guess that you're doing the same thing, because it's hard to get pre-K kids to watch a long cooking demonstration. We put child-safe knives in those kids' hands. We put their little screens and masks on, and they go to work and they make their salad, they make their burrito bowl, they make all of the recipes right in their pre-K class. And it's been phenomenal. And those parents love it as well.
That's so awesome. And my daughter's in culinary at ACC in Austin. She was in culinary in high school for 2 years. And so we made videos, especially during the pandemic, in our kitchen cooking, because I'm at Pecan Springs, and we also tied in with Brighter Bites. So they would give us the produce every other week, and we were supposed to teach a lesson with the food. So they would try it, and they gave us recipes, but my daughter came up with some, and we did spaghetti squash one evening, and that ended up going to their national newsletter. And so that's good for her resume. I was like, great.
That's wonderful.
Now that we're back in school, then yes, I do cook with the children. They help me. We just made applesauce last week, and they too had knives that they could use with the apples, and they just love it. And it's just
wonderful.
I was just wondering that when I saw this culinary, so she's sitting here also because I said, you need to listen. You can tell your professor you went to this class. But anyway, it sounds very good. And so thank you. We do love cooking and trying new foods and giving. I'm at a low income school. And so helping the families, get some healthy choices.
And the younger we get to these kids, the more likely they are to sustain these habits. We know that.
Well, and for snack time, that's another thing. Some classes will serve chips or goldfish or stuff like that, but we don't. We keep the food from the fruit. So some teachers will just send it back to the cafeteria, and we serve fruit at the end of the day for the children to have a good snack before they go home.
That's wonderful.
That's nice.
So it's prep time, but we love it. So it's a great program, and your program sounds wonderful also.
Thank you.
Well, we have probably time for 1 or 2 more questions if anyone has any more. Well, I will go ahead and end us a little early then. I would like to say, for any of you who haven't registered for our summit yet, it is going to be in Fort Worth the 2nd and 3rd of December. We have lots of great gardening sessions on docket for our summit. So we are really excited to be sharing that with you. Any of you who are on here that are already registered, I'm really looking forward to seeing you there. But thank you all so much. I will be sharing this recording tomorrow, and looking forward to our next webinar. So thank you, everyone.